a lot of people oversimplify it, and when I read, even in my own country, commentary about the BS and the Botswana government, the assumption is that somewhere in that space, one is a perpetrator and that the other is a victim. My genuine experience is nothing could be further from the truth. This is just a very complex arrangement in which two distinct institutions and organizations with a very different mindset, a very different set of goals, a very different business environment come together. The result is that it's very difficult for private companies and governments to reach convergence, even in partnerships that have longevity like DEPS 1. And so with this, I think it's important that people think more carefully about, the challenges of partnerships before people quickly conclude that partnerships are either bad or good. I suspect not, because to say there's an ideal model is to suggest that you might come up with a one-size-fits-all. What I think is important is not what the model is that any one country adopts, but it is more the reasons, the strategic reasons for establishing a joint venture. The more clear a country is about why it goes into a partnership with a private company, the more the country is clear about what the end state vision is and how they see this evolving, the better that joint venture is managed. Where the government or a country simply falls back on a sense of custodianship and a sense of entitlement, the more it falls back on mere policy and legal provisions, the weaker and the more difficult, I think, those partnerships prove to be. Success here is contextual, but let's just discuss it in generic terms. So one of the ways of assessing success is longevity. In other words, like any marriage, if it passes the test of time, by definition, we can say it's successful. Mm-hmm. So when we say, for instance, DEPS 1 is successful because it has crossed the half-a-century mark, no unsuccessful relationship achieves 50 years. Now, granted, it does not mean that in the 50 years there were no difficulties. Granted, it doesn't mean that there were no challenge or disagreements. Granted, it doesn't mean, for that matter, that there's nothing that can be improved. But it does mean that despite those challenges, despite that tension, despite those imperfections, we have managed to remain in the partnership. And so if we look at it that way, Codelco in Chile, which is a partnership originally between the government of Chile and Anglo-American and now Mitsui for the mining of that country's copper deposits. Chile is one of the world's largest producers of copper. Codelco is also considered a very well-run company. Considered the partnership has had conflict over the years, but they have been able to avoid, for instance, the relationship falling apart. Codelco is recognized as contributing very significantly to Chile's coffers, and Chile is considered to manage their fiscal policy better than most countries. And so when you link that back to mining and the partnership, then you have to say that they have succeeded. Where the government and the private companies see their future together and where they see the company going in a direction which they both agree, the potential to manage the joint venture successfully is enhanced. And so really thinking strategically, what is it that we want to achieve? And reaching agreement on the onset is a good foundation for a successful joint venture. The other issue that makes some joint ventures succeed where others do not succeed is that it's important in joint venture arrangements for each entity to bring real value to the table. There has to be mutual benefit. Mutual dependency is important. The notion that we may disagree on certain things, but that neither dares walks away, because the inherent value in coming together far exceeds anything else. This is a good formula. Finally, the importance of being comfortable with the notion of evolving. One of the most important things that I know about Botswana, for instance, is that when Botswana first started, the government of Botswana was content. As the country became more developed and the need for mere financial revenue was inadequate, and the government of Botswana now wanted other things, such as, for instance, a shareholding in the BS itself, such as, for instance, beneficiation. It meant then that unless the BS was willing to be flexible enough to reconfigure this partnership, that disagreement would incrementally undermine the partnership. And so the acceptance of the necessity for the nature, the purpose, the structure, and all things relating to the joint venture to evolve is critical for any joint venture to be successful.